Welcome back again to Bankruptcy with Ben. In today's episode, we are breaking down a bankruptcy filing of a company which until recently was not very well known, and it's called National Public Data. And what this company does is it is a data broker, and they're forced to file for bankruptcy after a vicious cyber attack which exposed the personally identifying information of millions of users. And this bankruptcy is a little bit different than some of the others that we had discussed previously. It was not caused by an economic condition, and it was not caused by allegations that its product somehow caused damage to other people, like we saw in both J&J and Purdue Pharma. Rather, it was a one-time occurrence that was so devastating and caused so much destruction that it is now seeking bankruptcy protection. As usual, we're going to get into the pleadings, which are the actual documents that were filed with the court. And that's going to tell us the real story, what is really going on, why are they in bankruptcy, and what, if anything, are they going to do about it. So let's dig in. Okay, the case was filed in the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of Florida, and it's called the Chapter 11 Case Management Summary. I'm going to highlight as we go along so you can see what I'm referring to. What this just means is it's a simple document that gives a court the roadmap for what the company is about, what caused the bankruptcy, and what are they going to do about it. It's kind of, think of it almost as cliff notes for the court. And in some districts, it can vary in terms of the form and the format. One of my pet peeves is that you do not have uniformity amongst the various courts or all across the country. Even though bankruptcy is federal law, every judge wants things done in a little bit of a different format. So be that as it may, this is the format for, think of it as the cliff notes for the court in the Southern District of Florida. All right, so we're going to discuss some of the key points, such as description of debtor's business. And this, again, gives us background. What does this company actually do? So that's kind of the starting point. So the debtor is a subscription data service offering institutional clients an opportunity to perform a rapid background check through an automated online connection. The background checks are specifically designed to support organizations who must prohibit entry of individuals with background issues, like known offenders, in real time who present to various institutions. As an example, a large portion of the debtor's business serves healthcare institutions. So you can imagine identifying information regarding healthcare institutions is pretty severe. But in plain English, what's going on here is that it's a little bit different than applying for a job, right? Let's just say you want to apply for a job working at you want to become a teller at your local bank. So the bank is going to say, okay, fill out this form and that form and this form and give us every piece of information ever since you were born, including where you got your measles shots and where you were treated for chickenpox when you were 2 years old. But in all seriousness, it's a very kind of comprehensive background check because an employer wants to be able to verify that they're not hiring somebody who has a bad character and will not be a good fit for their business, or who may have been convicted or charged with a crime or some kind of criminal record, or other kind of things in their background that would weigh negatively on them. But in real time, you just do not have that luxury of performing a whole background check. So, for example, you have a hospital and Johnny wants to visit his Uncle Bobby in the hospital. Uncle Bobby has been very, very sick lately. He's on death's door. And Johnny wants to make sure that Uncle Bobby knows that he is a very, very loyal nephew and that he was always there for him. And by the way, Uncle Bobby, just want to make sure that, you left me behind in your will. But really, I'm coming just because, I want to make sure that, you know that your family loves you. So in that kind of situation, obviously, if you're a hospital or a healthcare institution, you want to make sure in real time that the person who's coming up to visit does not pose any kind of risk, right? If they're an offender, if they're any kind of criminal background, you want to make sure of all that in real time. So this is what National Public Data did, is they provided these rapid background checks through online connections, and you can do it all in real time. The data provides an application program interface that can be reached through internet connectivity by the client. So it just means it's kind of like an online portal. You log into the portal and you say, okay, Johnny Smith, has Johnny Smith ever been charged with any crime? Is Johnny Smith an offender? So the client makes a software-based request and is returned a result determining whether the person has any background issues that would prevent them from visiting. The market for these services is narrow, and the debtor maintained a steady relationship with institutions for many years. Very little sales and marketing was required, and there are no staff members in these roles. The software infrastructure to provide this service is stable and managed by the owner-operator. The only ongoing efforts are the procedures used to update and maintain the database used to respond to the customer's query. This process uses a proprietary approach and a series of customized utilities to maintain the currency of the firm's data. Again, just kind of more background of what they do. Over the years, the owner has commissioned contract programming resources on an ad hoc basis to develop the tools they use for the database maintenance, right? So they have different programmers who help to maintain the database, keep everything nice and up to date. So now they want to know where are the locations of the debtor's operations, the company that's in bankruptcy, and whether the business premises are leased or owned. Now, again, why is that important? As we discussed previously, it makes a big difference whether you own a physical location, because if you own real estate, that is something of value. So you want to know in bankruptcy, does this company have anything of substantial value that could theoretically be liquidated to repay creditors? Or do you not own anything and do you lease it? Now, if you lease it, we want to know, well, what are the terms of this lease? Is it terms that are affordable? Are there terms not affordable? And that's maybe why you got into bankruptcy. And as we discussed, you can, in certain instances, you can actually reject a lease and you can say, you know what, we want out of this lease. This lease is no longer beneficial for us and we want out of it. Now, the landlord will have certain rights in that case. It's not a get out of jail free card, but that's the basic idea. So that's why we want to know this information. So the enterprise maintains no dedicated physical offices. And that's very interesting. For such a large operation, we have millions of users and they do not have any physical offices. The owner-operator maintains the operations of company from his home office, and all infrastructure is housed in independent data centers. And this is really interesting. It just shows you, oops, too much highlighting. It just shows you here from his home office. It just shows you that such a small company, a small operation with such massive consequences. It's one guy, it looks like, who works out of his house and has just as infrastructure housed in other data centers. There's no physical, tangible assets. Everything is digital. Now, what are the reasons that the Chapter 11 was filed? And again, this is the crux of it. What is the story? What's going on here? On or about late December 2023, a well-known and notorious hacker referred to as US DoD attempted to violate the firm's security infrastructure and access a database containing personally identifiable information that included millions of records. Oops, I did this again. This hacker has had a great deal of success reaching other institutions, including the FBI and TransUnion. The initial attempt was eventually discovered as the start of a substantial penetration. So they accessed very deep into the records, and data has since been identified on dark web sources. So this actually, if you can see what's going on here, is I think some actually brilliant lawyering by this company's attorney. Because if this was just some kind of careless error that was made by this company, that they were hacked by some college kid sitting in his parents' basement who, maybe got into a few, careless people's credit card accounts. Well, that's one thing. But here's a guy who calls himself US DoD, obviously trying to disguise himself as being part of the United States Department of Defense. And not only that, he's hacked the FBI. He's hacked one of the three major credit reporting. He's hacked one of the three major credit reporting bureaus. So this guy is not small potatoes. And the lawyer is using this to say, hey, we were also the victims of this terrible, terrible attack. This data breach caused a massive exposure of this data, and the release of this information is relatively ubiquitous within the hacking community. Law enforcement, including the FBI and a wide range of state and federal regulatory agencies, have responded to the breach in force. So law enforcement is already on the case here. Again, this lawyer is trying to do some damage control, saying the FBI was hacked, and now the FBI and other law enforcement are responding and getting the situation back under control. However, the damage has already been done. What's happened? Well, there have been class action lawsuits filed by individuals whose information was released. More than a dozen lawsuits have already been filed. And again, just to back up a second, what's important here is this is the reason why we're in bankruptcy, is because we now have liabilities that we have to deal with. So in every bankruptcy, think of it, the bankruptcy is giving some kind of protection. It's giving you a shield. It's kind of like a force field. But what is it protecting you from? It's protecting you from liabilities. So the company is financially healthy and everything is kind of hunky-dory, then there's no point to a bankruptcy. It's where there's liabilities that you need that breathing room, you need the protection of the bankruptcy court. So what are the liabilities at stake here? You have class action lawsuits and your regulatory agencies, and they're investigating the debtor and demanding substantial attention and resources to respond. Okay, so what does this mean? It means, let's say, for example, he has no staff working for him. Whoever this individual is, which we're going to get to the name of the individual that actually owns the company. But let's just say it's a one-man operation. And he does not have to pay any salaries to anybody. He may have other fees, but no salaries. Now, all of a sudden, regulatory agencies are investigating him. Now he has to respond. And if they say, well, we want every document, let's just say, every document that mentions the word DOD on it that you can ever find in your files. So now you got to search for every document with the word DOD on it and give this over to the government. Well, that's going to take up more time. You got to hire somebody, or at least at a minimum, you're going to have to probably buy some kind of software and maybe also hire somebody to kind of craft and put all these documents together and respond. That costs money. Money means more of a drain on your company, and that means less bottom line profit. So that's another drain on the company. 3, the reputational impact. And this is big. A lot of businesses depend on their reputation, on their relationships with their customers, right? So now all of a sudden they're being investigated for this massive data breach. Well, that is now all these customers who previously wanted them to, all these customers that previously used them for their data, for this real-time information. Wait a minute, we don't want to be a part of this. We don't want to be accused of having us now leaking somebody's data. So these companies are now going to want to steer clear from the debtor. So again, another reason that the company is facing financial difficulty. And now finally, the debtor is likely liable through the application of various state laws to notify and pay for credit monitoring for hundreds of millions of potentially impacted individuals. So again, just another expense that they now have to pay for. And here's the kicker. As the schedules indicate, the enterprise cannot generate sufficient revenue to address the extensive potential liabilities, not to mention defend the lawsuits and support the investigations. So there's 2 aspects. One is, if they're liable, they don't have enough money to pay them back. And 2, even forgetting about whether or not they're liable, just to defend themselves costs a lot of money. They got to pay lawyers. They got to pay for investigators. They got to pay all sorts of professionals to dig through the records and craft a defense. And the main thing, the debtor's insurance has denied coverage. And that's a big one. Because if their insurance covered them, okay, no problem. Make a claim to our insurance company. Maybe our rates go up a little bit. You have an accident, you get a little bit of the fender bender. All right, you report it to your insurance. It's annoying. Your insurance pays out. They say, okay, well, premiums are going up. All right, premiums are going up, but what are you going to do? Here, insurance declining coverage. No insurance at all. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works out, because very likely there's going to be separate litigation with the insurance company. And insurance companies sometimes have a tendency to do that. Their default is, we're going to deny you coverage because we're going to come up with all sorts of reasons why we're not responsible to pay out. Because what insurance company wants to have to pay out on a claim, right? You don't make money by paying out on a claim. You make money by collecting premiums and not paying out on claims. So insurance companies very, very often, all too often, in fact, like to not pay out on claims. So you might see some litigation against the insurance company to force the insurance company to pay out on the claim. And now, officers and directors. One individual, Salvatore Verini Jr., owner, operator, sole member, paid by direct distribution of dividends. So again, one person responsible for the data of millions of users, and it's causing an enormous, really, really causing just enormous consequences. And if you look at the gross income, and you would think for such massive scale, they might have a higher amount of money, but really not. 2023, 431,000. Okay. That was as of 7/31/2024. Although gross income 2024 fiscal year, much better, 1.1 million. Still relatively small numbers for a company that's really gained national attention for all the wrong reasons. Now here's just a couple kind of kind of standard reporting requirements. They want to know, do you have any tax obligations? So nothing current, but now they're facing regulatory challenges by the FTC because of the data breaches. So not tax related, but just related to the data breach. No secured creditors. The unsecured creditors, again, just the FTC. Now the assets, again, assets is because we want to know, are there anything of value that we can use to repay creditors? So the debtor has limited physical assets comprised of a variety of laptop, desktop, and server computers. So probably not very much, right? I mean, unless you have real fancy equipment, it's worth maybe a few $1,000s. A variety of video equipment, accessories, and lighting. What I use to create my podcast too, for example, right? I have a variety of video accessories, lighting, what every good podcaster has. But can you take this equipment and sell it on an open market and get anything of real value? Probably not. And then the databases of third-party value, right? Because it's information. Information always has value. Think of it as a Rolodex. What an individual sometimes can bring to a new law firm, right? In the law firm industry, a lot of the value that an attorney can bring is his contacts and the relationship. And that in of itself is worth money. So the data itself might have money, but that's going to be much harder to put kind of a dollar value on it. Here's interesting. The debtor has ownership of several TV show episodes that may have residual value. Curious what kind of TV show episodes this debtor is doing. Doesn't really talk about it. Hope it's something good. And now they're saying it again, assets range between 25 to 75,000. And I'm sure you can imagine that the lawsuit potential liabilities will far exceed the $75,000. Now they want to know the insurance policies. And again, this is their general liability insurance carrier, but the carrier has declined coverage. No other employees, again, one person, no payroll taxes, emergency relief. Is there anything that the court needs to address on an urgent basis? This sometimes takes the form of, you have to pay employees wages, right? So if you stop paying the wages of employees, that can, obviously the business can have serious consequences and can potentially be forced to stop operating, right? So you want to know, that would be the kind of thing where you would have to seek emergency relief from the court for permission to pay employees. Another one is cash collateral, which just means permission to use the cash of the business, because sometimes a lender will, the same way a mortgage company puts a lien on your house so you don't pay the mortgage. They come take the house back. They do the same thing with the cash of the business. You don't pay us our loan. We can immediately take all the cash of the business. And therefore, you need permission from the court because this cash technically belongs to the lender. So obviously, if we cannot use the cash, then the business cannot operate. So it's just, these are kind of some of the emergency type situations that would arise. But here again, no emergency, no cash collateral issues. And the signature, Salvatore Verini, President, Angelo Gaspari, Esquire, is the attorney. And just a very nice job done by that attorney. So that's the basic background. I think the big points to keep in mind that we're going to see going forward are, one is, what is going to happen with insurance? Is there going to be litigation against the insurance company? How will that play out? I think that's very, very likely. Second thing to keep in mind, how aggressive are the creditors going to be? Are the creditors going to believe that there's not much to repay here? Are they going to want a fire sale of all the assets of the business to whatever extent that may be? Are they going to want just the operation to be sold to a third party that might be able to take it over and make it profitable and then pay everyone back and kind of get everything cleaned up? So stay tuned. That's it for now. We'll see where things go. Until then, see you all in the next one.